and $65,000 forward towards the purchase of the next plow truck. Neither of these are standalones. They are down payments or first payments, if you will, or additional payments to other sums in past and future budgets that together make up the purchase price of these very expensive pieces of equipment. And the idea here is that we've learned in the last 2 months, 3 months, several months, and you've seen in the revenue reports that you received that excise tax revenues are rebounding. People are buying a lot of vehicles right now, and the town is doing better than it did in the last several years by far. If that trend continues, we're reasonably hopeful and certain that 1 year from now, at the end of the next fiscal period, we're going to be able to say that revenues from other sources have exceeded what we put in the budget by an amount that would offset the amount we're losing in revenue sharing. And that is reasonable to expect. And we could assemble here next year at this time and say, you know what, let's put the $60,000 in the fire truck reserve, and let's put the $65,000 in the public works reserve, because we have more than offset the loss of revenue sharing with the extra money we've received from other sources. And it's a nice option because it appears to be likely, but it's not certain. It's also possible that we might take partial funding of these items if we found that we got, say, some portion of $87,000 more than we budgeted, but maybe not the whole amount. And it might not be that we were looking at $60,000 or nothing for the fire truck reserve, or $65,000 or nothing for the public works reserve. It's a little more attractive, I think, than whacking paving at this time. It seems when we have our discussions in the springtime, in the winter and the springtime, that the paving schedule in Oakland is important to a lot of people. And for us not to do that, it's likely that paving prices will only increase in future years, and what we leave undone this year will cost us more in the future. So we put these three ideas in front of you, and we're eager to get tax bills out at the regular time this year, which is early July, compared to last year when there was so much uncertainty. Took us into October. It would be nice to resolve this question tonight so that we can get tax bills out promptly and avoid some of the cash flow issues that we had last year. All the numbers that we need from outside sources are now known to us. So if we can resolve this question this evening on how to deal with this $87,000 issue, then we can go forward in what we would call the normal fashion. And I guess I'd stop and ask if either Kathy, our assessor, or Doug, the finance director, would like to say things that I have left out.
I have been, over the past couple of weeks, gathering the numbers that I need. I have those numbers, and as a preliminary number, when I did my calculations, I used the school number, what we raised at town meeting, the county tax money that we need, the KRDA assessment that we need, and in our deductions, I used the $325,000, the full amount. And computing that today, this afternoon, the mill rate would be $13.80. All tentative at this point in time, with $29,000 overlay.
And it's
1380.
Yeah, but what is it, 13.7 or 13.5?
13.5.
13.5.
So that's a 30-cent increase
Yes.
net with what we saved and the increase at the school, the two kind of offset each other to some extent.
Yeah, that's what was raised at town meeting, that's what the school budget was. So what you wanna do with this, I'm not sure how it's gonna affect what I have to commit.
Does that include the tax money that we will receive from the gas pipeline?
No, it wasn't April here, April 1st.
Yeah.
Peter, back during budget discussion, I'm talking about item 1, back during budget discussions, I think we floated the idea, and I think also during town meeting, that if this revenue sharing didn't come through, that we weren't intending to raise the mill rate, we were gonna cut expenses somewhere, I believe. Wasn't that our discussion?
Yes.
So I don't think option 1 is a good option to think about, because that's not what we told people we would do. So I think one of the other options is what we should look at. I don't know how the others feel, but
I do have a comment. We've had a couple of years in which revenue sharing got cut in the middle of the year, and we used a tactic similar to number 3, option 3, to make up that shortfall. We basically offset it with other revenue so that we didn't have to cut any of the things that we had budgeted.
right.
Could you just repeat the figures, the assessments? Last year was 1305,
1350.
1350.
No, yeah, tentatively 1380.
What would that have been without the schools? Do you remember what the mill rate
I think it was
decreased?
37 cents under.
So it would have been 13? I think it's just, it's important for us to keep track of that we already had built in a 37.37 mil decrease. And option 3 does sound attractive. So I guess the town is doing the lion's share of trying to maintain stability, and any increases are not because of the town. I think sometimes that gets lost. They see the tax rate go up, and they look to us as the reason for the tax rate. But option 3 does sound like a way, and I don't really think, as Peter pointed out, to delay paving. We're gonna have to delay other projects next year that we would possibly have done if we do our paving if we don't do those paving projects this year. They will become $90,000 worth of next year's budget, and something that would have been added next year will have to be delayed. So, I guess if this is a sound option, I think that I can support it.
Doug, we only got a few more days here. What's your estimate on the excise tax? I know you gave us something here a month ago that we'd already surpassed the all-time total or something.
Right, we're right now about almost 90,000 over budget.
90,000?
Right, and we'll probably end up the year, 110,000 over the budget in the current year. And, we bumped it up about 15,000 for next year's budget, but, if we are flat, in our collections for next year, we'd still be, 85, 90, 100,000 over. That alone.
So if we go with option 3, there's no way without town meeting approval, we can go and dip into that. That'll go into fund balance, that 110,000 extra, right, that, for this year.
The fund balance grows from excise rather than revenue sharing. I guess is
Right.
what you'd say. One
Right.
we're hoping is going to replace the other.
Yeah, so, but there's no way that from next year's budget, we can go back and, so we'll have to depend on excise tax going up for next year more than we anticipate. And I know Doug is always very conservative on his estimates of excise tax, not knowing what the economy will do.
Right, basically, our estimate in next year's budget is right now, you would say it's low, because our excise tax collections have just taken off. So there is that potential to over-collect next year.
Right.
I mean, there's a good chance that happens.
Right. Do we have the authority to, later in the year, next year, to move that money back into these accounts?
Well, it's a question of timing, I guess, as to whether or not we would actually put the money into these reserve accounts based on a report that we'll give you a year from now, and you'll say that, yes, we should, or no, we shouldn't, or we'll do something in between.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we have that authority, right? Say next June, if we have $90,000 more than done, or 86 something, whatever, more than what is in the budget for estimated revenue now, we can move that into these
yes,
and rebuild
Fill
these
that back
accounts.
up.
yes.
Fine.
And I guess to go along with that, we have been authorized to spend by both vote and town meeting the
That's
total
right.
monies in our budget.
Yes,
So that would give us the authority to do this as well.
correct. And the decision at this point, I think, is to recognize that we may be receiving money from one source rather than another source. But the estimated amount of revenues have been approved at town meeting, and as to the expenditures, so.
I'd make a motion, we proceed with option 3 at this time, because it should be no problem for us.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you for your hard work. Good job, well done.
You're welcome.
It's all for you.
Now, is Kathy leaving?
I don't have to.
No, I have a simple question.
Ed wants to leave Red Sox winning.
Okay. I know.
He don't
I
care
know
about
it's
Kathy.
way early, Kathy, but on this pipeline, how do you appraise something like that that's in the ground? Do you go to a professional pipeline appraiser, or do you look up something and do that yourself?
No, it would take a lot of research on my part. Hopefully they would be forthcoming in giving me, numbers to work with.
Okay.
You know, how much
I mean,
per
I know it's
mile,
way premature,
size of
but,
pipe. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of discussion with the, assessors that the pipeline comes through their municipalities. We will be dealing with that. There's gonna be a lot of research that's gonna have to be done
because I
in
was
order
thinking
to put on a fair.
where I used
just
to work
value.
when we built something big like that, I was thinking the towns used to get some professional to come in and help appraise that for them
Oh,
or
well, you can
something.
do that too. You're gonna have to pay for it.
Well, yeah, but they figured they'd make up more than what it cost.
That could very well be true.
Yeah.
I'll let you know if that's needed. And we'll work it into our budget.
Thank you, Kathy.
We all set?
Yes, thank you. And then to consider approving a list of appointments for 2013, 2014.
If the list meets with your approval, you could do it with one motion. If you would prefer, you could do it individually, line by line. But the list is prepared for you to do it either way you prefer.
Did anybody go push the button on that thing anymore? Oh, she did, I didn't see that. I'd make a motion, we approve this list of appointments.
Second. All in favor?
You seconded it.
I just did that.
Would you please sign that, I have the original of it?
Red or
Green.
purple, please. While John's looking for his red ink pen, this is item number 6, to discuss the outdoor smoking being possible issue for control public area appointments.
I think, did that request originate with the police department?
Yes.
And they can't enforce a no smoking in the outdoor areas unless we make that part of the control of public areas ordinance. Don't know if you're so inclined to make that change. So this is really to ask you the question before we prepare language to begin a first reading or a second reading. But I think that's an issue that you could address either way.
Any questions, any comments on that?
There are no state regulations against smoking in public parks or anything like that,
Not outside,
not outdoors.
but there is a thing I put
Yeah,
in
you
the
gave
packet
it.
there that indicates if you wished to restrict outdoor smoking on public property, you may. I think I said that.
Now, is that a ruling like at Pleasant Point and at Oak Farm?
That's what we'd be talking about principally, yes.
Oh,
I think we ought to put that on the agenda for discussion with some announcements to people so they know that, and that we'll be discussing it for, you know, a future meeting, future agenda item.
Okay, you want,
Would you want,
what sort of announcements, or how would you like me to communicate?
I
that,
guess- well, I was trying to think, after I said that, whether you would want to come up with some proposed language first before we put it on the agenda to discuss it, or just to, would that be better than to just discuss it cold, or? I don't know which would.
Well, I guess we could use a plan of attack. If you want me to write something up, if you think this is likely to happen, if you think, no, we don't want to restrict things in that way, then we won't spend any time on it.
Did someone, and yes, did someone bring this to your attention and say that someone is smoking in the,
Can you, I can't explain it very well. Can you, Jane?
Chief was just having some problems, I guess, with it, and he said there was just no way to.
People were complaining to the police
There you go.
department,
Yep.
and there was no way for them to respond.
I guess I would support it for a couple of reasons, and I'm not sure what it would look like, but the theory being, the schools have all created policies to ban smoking on the entire school campuses, football games, baseball games, whatever, school property, no smoking. In here, for the Workplace Smoking Act, a person may not smoke tobacco in, on, or within 20 feet of a beach, playground, snack bar, group picnic shelter, business facility, enclosed area, public place, or restroom in a state park or state historic site. So basically, the state you can't smoke on, the school grounds you can't smoke on, so it only makes sense that the town grounds would be inclusive. So I don't know if that would be, you know, I don't know if we have to make a decision, but I think we definitely should be proactive.
So what we ought to have is some language and put it on an agenda for discussion then, and I think,
I can prepare some language as an addition to the control of public areas ordinance.
yeah,
Okay, I can do that.
and then we'll have it on the agenda item for some future meeting.
Okay?
Am I posting it for first reading here, or you just bringing the language that would be,
Well, why don't I write something up, and we'll make it for a first reading for the next meeting, which will be July 17th. That sound all right?
sounds good.
Manager's report, yep, I wanted to make sure that you had a copy of the press release that was given with the grant, to let you know that the police department received a grant for, these were for vests, safety enhancement grant. And this was for vests that the police department applied for, and that will assist them with obtaining equipment with non-property tax sources of money. The gas main project update. Work started, as you saw, out here on Fairfield Street. They started actually putting some pipe in the ground on Monday. This is a DOT-controlled road on Fairfield Street, so they got things organized with the Maine Department of Transportation sufficient for them to begin work. The DOT is working with them to make sure that things are done the way DOT expects them to be done. The model documents for the financial security that we need to protect ourselves from any mishaps on Country Club or Old Waterville Road are currently in front of me. There was some confusion about the data that has been straightened out today. I was trying to match the stations along the project path with the points that I had in the data, and it wasn't jibing, but they got me a corrected version of that today. It looks like they're gonna produce the expected amount of financial security so that we could protect ourselves if something happened, if they started the project on our roads and had to leave for some reason with things undone. Other than that, the agreements that we have to sign are probably ready to go tomorrow, so that we will be giving them a green light for work on Country Club Road and Old Water. They're dealing with DOT on Webb Road, KMD, and Fairfield Street. But they've had a lot of crew. I think they're fully staffed, but work is only ready to begin in a few places, so they're trying to keep everybody busy, I think is what it amounts to. But now I see they're starting to make progress. Things seem to be going a little better. And I guess that's a fairly frequent occurrence. If you've got a big project, till you get things rolling, things are a little clumsy, but I think they're moving forward and a little quicker each day. Hi, Don.
Very positive note, and talking to a couple of engineers, and they were exclaiming on the reception they've had from the communities, et cetera, et cetera. And many of them are staying in camps on rental property within the Oakland area. So it will have some economic support for our local businesses.
And the main contractor out here is K&K out of Turner. They're a Turner outfit, I think, that K&K contract, and there's a lot of them working down here.
They were on the scene. I happened to be in Chelsea on Saturday, and K&K was on site there, putting
Yeah.
pipe in the ground on Saturday, this last weekend.
I can't remember, he quoted the numbers that the chief engineers come from their company in Wisconsin, Arkansas, wherever it may be. But he said it was 200 Maine people will be employed in this area as a result of this.
And I understood that there'd be a lot more next year when they're making service connections to homes and businesses. But this piece now, putting the trunk main up through, apparently requires a certain level of expertise that only a few companies in the United States have. And that's why you're seeing some of these trucks from Wisconsin, and Schmid is a Wisconsin outfit.
Do you know if they follow the federal, is it the Mavis Beacon guidelines?
I do not know that. Good question. I don't know if there's grant money involved in this.
I was gonna say, you only have to follow that if you're using federal money.
Yeah, and I think this is a privately funded endeavor. That's an update on that. And in sort of related to that, I mentioned at our last meeting that we had repairs yet to make on Webb Road that are left over from the sewer project due to winter settlement. You remember we were still putting pipe in the ground last year at this time, and there was some settlement in the ground over the winter. Pratt and Company was doing work down there last week, which is now complete. The Maine DOT and we are satisfied with the work that's now been done on Webb Road, which means that when they start putting pipe in the ground on Webb Road and traffic is routed to the sewer project side of the road, the damage that might have occurred if they hadn't got this done has been forestalled and mitigated with the road you like to use. So that's good. That's the good thing. That's done in time and check. So thought I'd mention that. I wanted to give you an update on the Lower Oak Street project. You've seen Public Works over there working with Maine DOT and the paving company. Jeff told me that he's got one catch basin in the ground and 80 feet of pipe went in the ground Monday up towards the railroad tracks end of that project. We're trying to increase the drainage to get rid of some of the mud holes over there alongside the street. They had to jackhammer into a stub. Yesterday, some of the existing infrastructure has been difficult to work with, but progress is being made. You get 80 feet of pipe in the ground today, Tomorrow, they expect to get 40 more feet, and the other basin that's going up towards the credit union end of Lower Oak Street, where there's usually a big water problem, so that will be an immediate improvement there, so that we can get the sidewalk shaped up and in place before the paver comes back through to do more work for the main DOT. So the DOT told us today that Jeff's crew is ahead of the DOT schedule by enough, so we shouldn't be holding them up in any way, and that was good. Jeff thinks that we'll need a few more days next week to conclude our part of the project, but he's satisfied that we're moving ahead at a satisfactory rate and working with the DOT with some of the catch basins and pipes that they've supplied is beneficial to everyone in town, and we're sharing the cost of the DOT in that project in what I think is a mutually advantageous way. That's what I had on that.
I just wanted to ask, is Jeff gonna have enough crew next week for his 4th of July week, or is that not a rule of thumb that they take the 4th off?
A few days next week suggests to me that he should be done before the 4th,
Oh,
Monday,
good.
Tuesday, Wednesday. It's weather related to some extent, but he was optimistic tonight. I called him after work tonight, so I'd like to give you a fresh report. The swim area improvements over at Snow Pond took place. You probably saw those going on. We were working very carefully with the DEP, the lake groups, making sure that we were putting mats down for the equipment, excavating within this turbidity curtain that prevents the mud from moving around the lake. And everybody pronounced themselves pleased with the way that ended. There were 14 loads, 14 big truck loads of these stampings. If you saw any of them, looked like cookie dough. The cookies stamped out was the leftovers after you'd taken the lids of these tin cans out of the metal. All these pieces of very sharp stuff that came out by the truckload, and actually we're hoping to recycle some of that metal. The DEP was happy, the lake scoops were happy, and the project is complete, and people are enjoying the water safely, so we think that went well. And I also wanted to give you a question, a little report on last night's storm. Byron already asked me, but turned into quite a little event in Oakland last night. And from the various departments, I learned that the fire department had 18 calls between 4 and 11 yesterday afternoon. Everything from mutual aid, structure fires in Smithfield, to trees down, mostly in this section, where am I? This section of town, not the northern section of town, but the southern section of town, where most of the tree damage occurred. Dan Boldick had a problem at the sewer pumping station. Lightning struck a transformer there and damaged the transformer in a way that neither our electrician or the CMP people had seen before. It blew a leg off a transformer, which caused our generator to misread what was going on, so the generator didn't come on. So the pumps went down from CMP, the generator didn't come on. Dan got the alarm. Dan came in, he got the generator started manually. He went to shift it over, and it wouldn't transfer from the generator to the equipment, because the signal was still coming that everything was fine when it wasn't. He waited for the electrician to come from Skowhegan, and CMP got there, and they just took did whatever they did, and found that there was something that CMP could fix. It was on their equipment, and CMP fixed it, and Dan got back in operation at about 3 o'clock this morning. So anyway, it was a happy ending, but it was an unexpected occurrence as a result of a lightning strike. AJA had 3 trees down, or damaged to the point where the trees will have to come down in the cemetery. Public Works had to take half their crew off from the Oak Street job to go out and do some storm response, getting trees out of the road this morning. And the worst of it seemed to be around Alpine Street, East School